There's nothing quite as pure as the love of a child. It would then stand to reason that when one loses said love, they would be willing to do anything to have it back. And tonight, we're going to see just what macabre lengths someone will go to.
What's that? You want to be scared? Come with me. You will experience tales of horror, ghosts, and death. It is not recommended for the weak at heart. Listen in the dark. It's more fun that way. This is Weekly Spooky.
Hello, my spookies. It's Wednesday, and you know what that means. It's time for a little spooky in your weekly. I'm your host and narrator, Enrique Couto, and we have a very eerie story for you tonight. A story that made me think of all of my beloved Edgar Allan Poe stories, but with a very different twist. But before we get to that, I need to say, simply put, thank you so much for listening. Weekly Spooky brings you some Halloween cheer and Halloween fear every single week. Not just in October, not just in the fall, but all year long. And we're heading straight toward our 200th episode. So, make sure you're ready for that one. So why not go to your favorite podcasting app and make sure you're subscribed so you never miss a single episode. And while you're on that app, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or iHeartMedia, leave us a 5-star rating. It doesn't cost you a penny, and it guarantees that new listeners will discover our brand of terror. It's also a new month, and that means if you go to weeklyspooky.com and click on Patreon, for as little as $1 a month, you'll get a brand new bonus episode, and so much more, including our undying gratitude. That's how you support the show directly. But really, my friends, all I care about are your ears. So get them ready, stretch them out, get comfortable, because tonight's story is truly the stuff of nightmares, and I know you're going to enjoy it. We'll get to that story right after these quick words from our sponsors, so make sure you don't go anywhere and don't turn on the lights. The Eighth Abigail by L.F. Falconer. The child should have been dead long ago. Instead, she stands still as a snow-covered lawn ornament in the night. Ebony hair whips in wicked shadows amid the rush of white flakes that streak through the air. Her nightgown billows like sails. A doll clutched with her left arm is crammed tightly against her chest. The other arm hangs loose and large and useless by her side. Even though it might be more merciful, I loathe the part of me that wishes to leave her out there and allow the cold to do its damage. I've already kept her longer than I ever meant to, but I cannot allow any others to see her, especially my sister. Victoria believes I burned the child months ago. Perhaps I should have. It's a fight with the wind to hold the door open as I call out, "Abigail, come back inside!" She makes no move, keeping her sight fixed upon the house up the hill. Her lack of acknowledgement might be a failure to hear me over the roar of the storm. Yet, today has been a bad day. A willful day, on her part. Her choice to ignore me probably has nothing to do with the weather. It was a night very much like this, a night cold and dark and filled with storm, which killed her before. and I cannot help but wonder what she's thinking. There's little left to be done. I can't leave her out there, so I pull on my boots and jacket, tuck the keyring into my pocket, and don my hat and gloves. Glancing out the window, I gather up my favorite knitted afghan, as red as roses in my sister's summer garden. A deep breath pushes me on. Once more, the door tries to escape my grip as I exit the house. I force it closed behind me, making certain that it's secure. From the shelter of the porch, my call is more emphatic. "Come inside, Abigail! Now!" The girl makes no move, transfixed by the twinkling Christmas lights that adorn the gabled gingerbread on my sister's house on the hill above us. The red, green, blue, and golden lights breaking like stained glass upon the cold white expanse which separates the Gothic main house from my own. Gay, dancing lights outline all the eaves. The leaded windows, glowing amber in the night, portray a holiday cheerfulness which belies the madness that lives within my sister's home. My own simple domicile, a caretaker's cottage in its day, is dreary in comparison, though not lacking in its own irrationalities. Barely discernible, the only illumination within my home stems from a single light bulb in the hallway which filters anemically through the blinds of the living room window. The only light allowed after dark, lest someone catch a glimpse inside. Though years have passed, it seems not that long ago my sister was a proficient geneticist, employed at a reputable laboratory. She keeps to herself now. After the death of her husband, soon followed by the death of her daughter, Victoria became a recluse and walled herself away within the cocoon of her inherited home. I'd hoped to help her through her time of mourning and took up residence within the small home beside hers, adjacent to an abandoned mortuary and crematorium. To support myself financially, I chose to make use of the facilities on hand, taking classes at the university to become a mortician. Once my license was obtained, Victoria endowed me with enough of her dwindling inheritance to refurbish the old mortuary and bring it up to code. It was an ideal situation for us both, keeping us near to one another in Victoria's time of mourning. With her daughter's unfortunate death, I had lost more than a niece. I had lost my sister as well, as she succumbed to her despair. More than that, she became ensnared by an overwhelming drive to undo what had been done. At first, I supported fully her habit of dabbling in her home experiments, her efforts to clone her beloved Abigail. The focus appeared to ease her distress, and I hoped it would help her work through her grief until the sister I had once known might one day find her way back to me. Yet year after year, my sister's cloning experiments proved to be constant, efficient failures. Looking back, I should have sought some help for her then, for she began to abandon the genetic approach, sinking into desperation as she delved into more ancient, sinister alternatives. It was through those alternatives that she came to depend upon me even more. While it went against my better judgment, without too much nefariousness on my part, I was able to provide Victoria the body parts she requested for her new laboratory experiments. At first, it was merely a face or two she required. Those she would meticulously alter and keep viable in cold storage. She soon became quite adept in her abilities to alter one's appearance from its natural state to the one she desired. Then she began to want more. She asked for an arm here, a leg there, a head, a torso. And from those poor souls who entrusted me with their final exit from this earth, I became a thief in order to indulge my sister's passion. I gaze again upon the wretched being standing like a statue in the snow. The wind tries to push me back, but I leave the shelter of my porch and trudge out into the storm. Deep snow edging its way over the tops of my boots. I drape the red afghan over Abigail's shoulders, stirring to life a whiff of lilacs and death. I cannot know how well she feels the warmth or the cold. I cannot know if she feels the wind biting her lips and cheeks or the hair whipping her face. I cannot know if she's aware of the drifts that envelop her naked feet like a pair of downy white shoes. But I do know she is aware of the twinkling, colored lights. Her eyes dance with them as they pierce through the snow, and she does not move, not even a shiver. "Please, Abigail, come back inside with me," I urge without touching her. Even protected by my gloves, I have no wish to touch her dead, fragile flesh, made colder still by the storm. Abigail makes no move, as if she hadn't heard me. Yet I believe she did hear. I do know she hears, even when she chooses not to respond. But I've learned that sometimes no response is preferable to the emotional tempests I've come to encounter of late. I have no wish to instigate the increasingly destructive power of her outbursts. She is not like the Abigail she is supposed to represent. This girl is rage, unconstrained. All hate and bile, teeth and claws. At one time, this child was loved. She was happy. She frolicked through the grass, chasing butterflies in the summer. She caught sweet raindrops on her tongue. She tickled the bellies of fat puppies and kittens and sang her ABCs along with a Muppet on the television. She played with dolls, dressing them in finery of satin and sparkling lace instead of maiming them and eating them. These things I do not know for a fact, but I imagine. She was a healthy child when she died in that car accident a year ago. Therefore, I imagine she was as happy and playful as a young girl can be. As happy and playful as the first Abigail was. The original Abigail. But this is not the Abigail I knew. This Abigail I have only known in death, in bad temper, in despair. The face she wears, a face treated and cured, a face made to endure like a living mask, a face delicately crafted from another, reshaped and reformed to simulate Victoria's daughter. A face manually jolted to animation. This face no longer resembles the niece I once knew and loved. This face harbors smoldering resentment deep inside. It has never smiled. The eyes shine not with sparks of living joy, but with anguish and fury. Too often they are empty and lacking in soul. At this moment, the only light that reflects in them is a twinkling rainbow, which bleeds across her moist, dark pupils like watercolors. What memories do these lights ignite inside the revenant child? Does she recall her death? Does she remember her life? I once tried to warn Victoria of this, of how, to the dead, death is often preferable over a life no longer their own. But Victoria is convinced that eventually she will reconstruct her beloved Abigail, and the torture which now drives her to such unscrupulous ends will disappear as if blown by the wind. When successful, all will be forgiven beneath the newborn shroud of Abigail's love. How many faces does Victoria have on hand? How many have I supplied her as I abet her obsession? How many of her failed experiments have vanished in my fires? I have only myself to blame. Last December, this child died with her mother. She should have remained in death. But the 2 lives cut short were put into my care, and with that, another Abigail came to be. Not a child made of bits and pieces this time, for other than the face, the only part not original is the right arm. Her own was shattered beyond redemption. The one she bears now had belonged to her mother. The arm never did work, the bulky appendage always dangling like a broken pendulum at Abigail's side. She had been the correct age. She had been nearly a complete specimen. It was as if she had been a gift. A Christmas gift. One I presented to my sister unrequested, hoping to finally put an end to our miserable existence. Victoria meticulously bestowed the girl a new face and brought her back to life. Unfortunately, the child failed from the start. Never could she master the art of speech, managing mere grunts and animalistic snarls and growls. She ate whatever she liked, much of it unsanitary and undigestible trash. She refused to learn and follow rules. Her dead flesh never fully recovered, taking on a greenish, septic hue. And while my sister could rebuild a close physical replica to her lost daughter, she could not reanimate Abigail's soul. With yet another failure on her hands, Victoria returned the child to me for disposal, as she had done time and time before. I do not know what kind of monster Victoria thinks I am. Or am I a monster for keeping the child alive? After all, this child is different than all the others. She was my choice, and she was so nearly a success. Yes, she is flawed, but aren't we all? She's close to success, but not close enough. To Victoria, she was simply another failure. By the time she came back into my possession for disposal, suppuration had fully established itself beneath pockets of flesh. Putrefaction caused a bloat to her skin. For a time, the use of guttural and carbolic soap helped, but the necrosis could not be stemmed. I can no longer bathe her. Large chunks of dry, blackened flesh peel off in the process, and her stench is becoming unbearable. My lilac-scented cadaver spray no longer helps. I cannot comb her mangy hair lest the teeth wrench it free from her scalp. I cannot keep her from wandering outside. I cannot keep her from eating unsavory things. I cannot make her happy. Though alive, she does not live. Though dead, she does not die. The wind, with its petulant gust, rips the Afghan from Abigail's shoulders and spills it onto the snow where it lies like a pool of blood. After a moment, I retrieve it and cover her again, pulling it around to block the sight of the doll she carries. A doll at one time fresh and as pretty as she herself had once been. A doll now marred beyond repair. It wears no clothes. The nose, the cheeks, the fingers have all been chewed away, the hair torn from the perforated scalp. The marble eyes gone, leaving behind only deep, gaping holes through which the doll cannot possibly see. Yet in her own way, Abigail adores the doll, evident by the way she forever holds it close, as if, perhaps due to their shared deformations, it could return her affection. Does she see the doll as an extension of her own self? A flawed, disposable plaything? I bring my gloved hand up in an attempt to tame the wild, dark hair blowing free in the wind. It is matted and stiff beneath my touch. Together, Abigail and I stand motionless in the snow, watching the colorful carnival of lights shatter through a hazardous rhapsody in white. She, an imperfect shell in need of love and compassion. Me, the denier of death, or the giver of death. Bundled as I am, still I grow chilled. "We should go now, Abigail," I whisper against her ear, allowing the frenzied flurry surrounding us to swiftly cleanse the air. Placing both hands upon her shoulders, I struggle to guide and turn her around, but her frostbitten, gangrenous feet fail. She collapses to the snow, her big, dead arm making no move to break the fall. Her left arm still clutches the doll. Abigail's eyes stare blankly into the flickering, colored night. Dark hair oozes like coal tar across her face. Chunks of necrotic flesh cling to the packed snow where she had stood. I do not know that she cannot feel the pain. I only know she does not react to it. Perhaps that's a small blessing. The house on the hill in its gaudy holiday dress taunts us with its screams of false cheer and joviality. Tears well in my eyes, causing the lights to blur. Without my knowledge or aid, Victoria has managed to acquire a new child. A living child this time. A child which now bears the face of the dead. Where she got her, I do not know. I do not want to know. For 20 years, Victoria has struggled to bring her daughter back, her life an endless journey of broken dreams and sadness. I do not know what it's like to lose a child. That's a grief I have yet to encounter. But is life truly better than death? Does not Abigail, the first Abigail, the original Abigail, deserve the respect of cherished memory? Victoria believes she is creating a miracle by doing the work of a negligent god. Yet her work benefits only her own insatiable hunger for something that should never be requited. At the moment, Victoria is happy. She has no remorse. But when her new Abigail begins to sour in her expectations, what then? Will she simply give her over to me for disposal and start anew? I bring my unwilling hands back to the child in my care. Come with me, Abigail. It's time to go home. I try to coax her back to her feet, but she fails to cooperate. Her gaze remains fixed upon the colored lights on the hill. What do her dead, not dead eyes truly see? I kneel beside this eighth Abigail, my knees grumbling against the cold. Last Christmas I denied this child death. This year, I will give it back. I do not know if she feels the cold, but she might. I do know she will feel the heat. And I know I can no longer bear the screams. The words crawl through the lump in my throat only to die on the wind. Merry Christmas, child. Forgive me. Her only response is the reflection of fanciful lights glimmering upon her liquid eyes. My gloved hand presses firmly over her nose and mouth. For a moment, her eyes leave the mesmerizing lights and focus upon my own, stony and comprehensive. There is little fight left within. A small fist pounds her clutched doll against the snow. Bony heels kick, once, twice. She surrenders and goes limp beneath my hold, slipping into an undead sleep. Clustered snowflakes melt upon my cheeks. I pry the glove from my hand and pull the keyring from my pocket, locating the key to the crematorium. I need to feel the cold metal against my skin. I need its hardness to steel my resolve. I lift the child into my arms. It's much like hoisting up a small bag of sugar, a negligible load, yet a load as burdensome as the cross I must bear, my sins as great or greater than my sisters in this folly. It is only Abigail who holds no blame. Abigail, who always pays the price. I just gotta say, Ella Falconer is never messing around. Her stories are truly chilling and wonderful, and we can't wait to have a little bit more of her content right here. So, LF, if you're listening to this, send over anything, anytime. Weekly Spooky would love to have you. I hope you enjoyed that story as much as I did. It really did give me these chilling feelings. I got a lot of Edgar Allan Poe vibes. Maybe that's because on Friday nights I've been reading Poe for all of you. I don't know if you've noticed that yet, but on the feed there are several Edgar Allan Poe stories and poems that I've recorded as a little bonus to thank you for joining me on the Spooky. And it's definitely painted the way I'm reading other stories, I suppose. But there are worse things than being inspired by the true American master of horror, Edgar Allan Poe. And speaking of truly awesome, I want to say a big thank you to our Patreon backers who make this show possible every single month, and especially our Patreon podcast boosters, folks who pay just a little bit more to hear their names at the end of the show. And they are Bobbletopia.com, Megan Hua, Julia Kirsch, Brent McCullough, Gino Lyons, Steve King, Karen Weemet, Jack Kerr, and Craig Cohen. Thank you all so much. And if you want to hear your name at the end of every weekly spooky show, all you have to do is go to weeklyspooky.com, click on Patreon, and select a $15 or higher tier. You'll get all kinds of bonuses and my sweet, silky voice reading your name on the show. But now, my friends, I have to go and do something truly terrifying, which is find a plumber. Yes, I have been documenting my battles with homeownership right here on the show, and I'm worried that maybe that's a little too scary. So for myself, for our executive producer Rob Fields, our producer Dan Wilder, and our composer Ray Mattis, I'll talk at you next time.
Thank you for listening. Make sure to find your way back next week. But for now, you are safe. Trust me.